a Thursday afternoon to be joined by none other than legendary Clemson SID Tim Bourret. And by virtue of it looks like he is in his car, my only guess is that he's had a chance to play a little golf today if it's not raining in the upstate. Maybe I'm wrong. Tim, what's going on? How are you?
Lawton, you're way off.
Oh, no.
So I spoke to the Greer Touchdown Club today.
I have spoken to the Greer Touchdown Club.
Okay. And I am now at a rest at a gasoline stop in Tennessee. Actually, I'm on my way to South Bend. This weekend, they are honoring my former boss, Roger Valdesari. And so they're having a luncheon on Friday. So I'm going to the luncheon and then turn around and come back for the Clemson football game. But that's a lot of driving. But let me be perfectly honest with you. I owe my career to Roger Valdesari. So I'm looking forward to. He's 93 years old.
Wow.
And they're going to honor him in the press box. And they're going to have this permanent chair that's going to be his seat in the press box at Notre Dame. And so looking forward to that.
Isn't it amazing? And we got a great segue into something I do want to talk to you about, but listening to you talk about Roger Valdesari the way you did, isn't it amazing how the people who impact us in that way, like you think about the money that you've put in your pocket all those years, going back to him, how much that individual means to you. I mean, I think it's incredible when we hear stories like this.
Oh, yeah, without a doubt. And Bob Bradley did too. But Bob Bradley wouldn't have hired me if I hadn't worked for Roger Valdesari. So he kind of started it all for my career. But yeah, seems like there's more legendary figures years back. But yeah, he's meant a lot to my career, and so I'm looking forward to seeing him.
He is a wonderful follow on Twitter, Tim Bourret, legendary Clemson SID, gives you all the great scoop and great notes about the things going on around the Clemson Tigers. And Tim, you talked about driving. So I was talking about this is the road trips edition, ironically. And so you just happened to be on one. And really, for me, it was about, when the ACC was a little bit more intimate, making those travel arrangements with your buddies. You drive, you didn't have cell phones. You say, hey, man, after the game, we're meeting at this lamppost. If you're not here at 9:45, we're leaving. Figure out how you're going to get back. But from the standpoint of Clemson and travel and fans, I mean, it's so unique because of how intimate those leagues were. Think about those years when you first got at Clemson. What was the tailgate scenes like that you would see at these venues? I mean, how did Tiger fans travel before you needed maybe a plane to go out to A&M? I mean, would you have any great memories on that front?
Well, I do have great memories of, Clemson fans going on the road. Now, when I started in 1978, there were only 7 teams in the ACC, so you only had 6 league games, and the Clemson fans would travel. The most famous story I can remember, my first year in 1978, we went to NC State, and I believe we used all our tickets, 5,000, and they all sat together. And NC State was driving, and there were a certain part of the field that was near where and they were on the side of the field where the Clemson fans were, and the NC State quarterback had to call timeout because he couldn't hear the signals, and the game was at NC State.
Wow. I remember when that was a penalty. You remember when that was a penalty?
Now, that was a penalty sometime after 1980, and one of the reasons it became a penalty was a Clemson-Virginia Tech game in 1980 at Clemson. And, Virginia Tech had the ball like the Clemson 1-yard line. They went to the line of scrimmage, and, they couldn't run a play. The quarterback kept turning around. And so finally the official just got sick of it. And so the quarterback turned around again, and the official pointed at him. So he goes to the line of scrimmage to call the play, and one of their guys jumped off sides. So it became 2nd and goal from the 6. They never scored a touchdown. They had to kick a field goal. Clemson won the game 13-10. And so the Virginia Tech people, this was a non-conference game in those days, they went crazy about the whole thing and about the Clemson fans. And so I think it was that next year after that it became a penalty, but that incident had a lot to do with it.
And I can vaguely remember being at games as a kid where the stands would get so loud, they'd throw a flag on Clemson for being too loud, and then the fans would just get louder. It was the most absurd thing. Like the coach has no control over that. And oh man, but yeah, I don't know when that changed, but I do remember that. Tim Bourret with us here on the program. So Tim, I was also thinking about the road trips from the team perspective. I mean, when you got there in 78 and I don't know when you would have started traveling with the team, whether it was the first year or year 5 or 10 or whatever, but did they always take planes? I mean, they always fly to I think now they would fly to Raleigh, right? Or would they hop on a bus and go to Raleigh back then?
No, we flew to Raleigh. We would drive to Wake Forest, although sometimes we've flown to Wake Forest. Sometimes a coach, when it was going to be like fall break the next week, they might drive back. They might take a bus back. But yeah, for the most part, it's been, if it was a 4-hour drive, you would fly. So that's usually, the way it was, even back in 1978. I believe the first plane flight Clemson had was in 1948 to a game at Boston College. I'm not sure of the year, but I know Clemson's first team plane flight was to Boston College.
That's unbelievable. Back in the 1940s, that is unreal. And because I was thinking, I mean, you know me, I'm thinking, well, the coaches were probably like, hey boys, we got to hop on the bus. We got a 6-hour drive ahead of us. Get on. I can't imagine that they were flying that frequently. I mean, has the what's the right word here? The ease of access to flights and travel and things, as you've been a part of this, I mean, has it gotten easier? And I know they gotta ship the equipment. They got the big trucks that take those things out several days in advance when you got to really travel. But I mean, how is it from the standpoint of a guy like you, if you can compare traveling with the football team in the 70s versus traveling with them in 2020?
Well, the planes are a lot bigger. They take more players. I guess you're allowed to take 72 guys in a road ACC game now. I'm sure in 1948 or whenever it was, Coach Howard probably only brought about 50 guys with him on that plane. There was a famous trip to play Rice in Houston in the 50s, and somehow the engine caught on fire at takeoff, but then the wind or something blew it out, so they were able to get back to the airport and land back. That was probably the most serious incident that took place. That was in the 1950s. But I mean, the planes have gotten nicer and bigger. I've actually over the years, and you can bring more people, and obviously there's more staff now on Dabo Sweeney's staff than when Danny Ford was the coach.
Again, legendary Clemson SID Tim Bourret, longtime SID at Clemson, joins us here on Thursday afternoons. He's making his way up to South Bend, Indiana today, and he's going to turn around and make it back for Clemson's matchup against Georgia Tech Saturday in Death Valley. Final couple of things on travel and road trips, et cetera, Tim, and then we'll dive in a little bit into this game in this series. But, I also have always been intrigued by the days before you would take a plane. And I know I've talked to people who have followed college football for years, and you certainly, not just Clemson, but everywhere, have this sort of built into your blood. But back in the day when you get on a train and go to a venue, like that's the other thing I think people forget about is prior to people going somewhere by bus or airplane. I mean, these guys would load up on a train, right, and go play at Virginia Tech or at, I guess, Georgia Tech. You might take a train.
Yeah, I don't know the last time Clemson took a train trip. Now, I do know that they took a train to go to the Cotton Bowl in 1939, and there's a famous story of there was a guy who was not on the trip, but he was a walk-on, and he was at a he was from a place where they were stopping. And so he, when they were stopped, he jumped on the train, and then one of his teammates let him, bunk in with him. And he basically was a stowaway for the Cotton Bowl game. I'm not sure what Coach Neely did when he saw him at the game. I don't recall that he played, but it was kind of interesting that took place.
Absolutely incredible. Again, that was 1939, right? That would have been 1939. Is that correct? You said?
Yeah. And, if you look in the results also, speaking of flights and long flights, and I do want to write a story about this sometime this year, 1951, which was 60 years ago, 70 years ago.
70.
Yeah. Clemson played at Pacific. And obviously flew out there. They didn't drive all the way to Pacific. And Brent Breeden, who was the SID at Clemson before Mr. Bradley, he was a sports writer for the Anderson paper then, and he actually traveled with the team on the plane out there. So I'm going to try to get with him, and he's about 94 years old now. And I want to get with him and get his remembrances on that.
Oh, no kidding. That's incredible. I mean, so long ago, and to make the flight back to, that would have been insane to think about, I think, from that standpoint, because it was just so new still. All right, Tim, final thing, and then I'm going to ask you about Georgia Tech, and we'll let you get back on the road. So after a ball game, for years, are you on the bus or the plane? Who's right beside Dabo Swinney? Is it Ross Taylor? I mean, is it you? Are you giving him stats, or is it Tony Elliott? I mean, what's the seating arrangement like, if you can pour in on that a little bit?
Well, Dabo would always be in the front bus, and usually Danny Poole would be up there with him because, he was kind of semi in charge of the trip. Fred Hoover used to be pretty much in charge of the trips. The head athletic trainer would have a lot to do with the running of the trip and lining up the buses, and so he'd be up in the front. But sometimes Dabo would sit with Coach Scott, looking back, Coach Bowden. A lot of times.
I mean, do they have do they already have the game cut up on like an iPad or something they can watch at that point? Or
they do now, and they actually had video. Now they've had video of when the basketball team. When it was making a bus drive, I remember as far back as 1992, 93, when Chris Whitney was playing for Clemson, we lost the game at NC State. And I remember that the team looking at the film, and they had TV monitors in there, and they had them all hooked up to a VCR. And so I remember as far back as that the team looking at tape of a game. Now the coaches today, they've got all their iPads, and so they're breaking down film and looking at film, on the way back.
Pretty instantly, then. That's incredible, because I know they got to have people cutting it up right there. This is the pass 20 yards to the right, and they can watch every one of them. So for people that have never seen that type of I think it's fascinating for them to hear you kind of give that insight. Man, I could probably go hours with you about bus travel and the kind of nuances behind the scenes that a lot of people don't get to see. Let's talk real quick about Georgia Tech. Last season, for many years, this was a 3-point spread for, I know the number, probably 7, 8, 9 years, whatever it was. Last season, a little bit more than the 3-point spread, 73-7. I don't think anybody's calling for anything like that on Saturday, but just talk briefly about what this rivalry, in your opinion, means to Clemson, even though there was a wide margin a year ago.
Yeah, well, of course, the two teams go way back playing, and Georgia Tech dominated the series for many years. I believe it was from 1907 to 1973. Every game was in Atlanta. Georgia Tech didn't come to Clemson until 1974. Coach Neely and Coach Howard liked to balance the budget, and I guess they were getting a good guarantee from Bobby Dodd down in Atlanta. They finally came to Clemson in 74 and Clemson won. Clemson had a good team in 1974, and by today's standards, definitely would have gone to a bowl game. Went 6-0 at home, beat Georgia and Georgia Tech both at home that year. And of course, the rivalry kind of stepped up, took another level when Georgia Tech joined the league. They joined for the 79-80 academic year, but they couldn't work out the football schedule, so that they started competing for the league championship until 1983. But yeah, there were some great games. I mean, it was a big upset in 1984. Georgia Tech upset Clemson the week after Clemson lost to Georgia down in Athens. That was one of the examples of the all-time great hangover games where a team beat you twice. That was a 60-yard field goal by Butler, and then we lost the next week in Atlanta. But yeah, we had that run of, I think, 6 straight games that were decided by exactly 3 points, which is pretty amazing. So that really enhanced the rivalry. Of course, another memorable game for Clemson was 2006 when the first game was ever game day at Clemson, and James Davis ran for 216 yards, and C.J. Spiller ran for 116 yards. Also had a 50-yard touchdown pass reception in that game.
Man, it'll be a good one, hopefully, in Death Valley between the Tigers and the Yellow Jackets, old rivals squaring off this Saturday. Tim, safe travels the rest of your way. Enjoy the celebration, and definitely look forward to catching up with you soon, and hope to see you in Tiger Town. Sounds good. Thanks, Lawden. Yes, sir. Thank you for sharing. Tim Bourret, man, wonderful, awesome. Wow. Don't you just want to dive in a little bit more? Like, I didn't find out where Ross Taylor sits or where Tim Bourret sits. I didn't find that information out. So with that,